Hello and welcome to Quick Take TA here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is April 30th, 2024. And although today is still the 30th for me, Bitcoin has moved on to May already. So it is the May 1st candle. That does mean that we have seen now a monthly closure for Bitcoin and a 2-month close for Bitcoin. Now, something to watch that we'll talk about a little bit later in the video is the quarterly close that's going to be coming in at the end of the May candle. But we want to talk about this move down to support because things are getting pretty interesting. Likely what you're seeing is a lot of very bearish targets, and we are going to talk about some of those scenarios. We're going to kind of gameplay some of those scenarios now that Bitcoin is playing around the bottom side support here on the monthly. This support is the March of 2021 monthly close. This is also a quarterly support area. So it's going to be very interesting if Bitcoin were to break down from it. And what I mean by interesting isn't necessarily in the bullish or bearish sense, but it would mean that I believe I would have to reevaluate some of my views that I've espoused here on this channel about the length of this cycle. Many of you already know that I believe that we are going to see a quicker top in this particular cycle than many expect. But if Bitcoin were to break down from this monthly and quarterly, I think we're going to see a drawn out cycle. And in this case, Bitcoin flirting with the bottom side of the range is something that we had already previously discussed. My personal thoughts on this were that I would not be surprised if Bitcoin came back down to retest the lows. It has now done so. We did see, a decent buy off of the lows here. Bitcoin is playing around the lower second standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here on the daily. That does mean that if it closes a daily below the lower second, we will see BBWP continue to increase. That is the volatility of price within the Bollinger Bands and outside of them. And in this case, volatility increases, on the move away from the basis. And we see that Bitcoin spiked right down and through the lower second standard deviation in yesterday's price action and is now trading back below in the lower term timeframes. Now, if Bitcoin is going to break down from this range, what we need to see are some conditions met, and that would be closing below the lower second standard deviation, and that would be on a close that would significantly increase volatility. And in this case, we would also need to see the actual wick lows broken down below, in addition to breaking down and closing below the March of 2021 monthly and quarterly close open high. Now, as we go up through the time frames, we're going to discuss a few different things, and we're going to take a look at a few different things in addition to the Bollinger Bands. But I do want to be mindful that we are going to check on some lower term time frame stuff too, particularly the 12-hour setup, because it could start to paint a little bit of a different picture that leads into the daily if this zone holds. All right, so let's move on to the monthly real quick and see where we closed at. Well, we closed below the lower second, or I'm sorry, the lower second. The lower second's all the way down here, by the way. Very, very, very far away from price, down at $4,000. So we are not, we did not see, rather, Bitcoin close below the lower second, but in fact, it closed below the upper second. So because volatility is increasing on the monthly, we see that the upper second continued past price as price moved down to close below where it previously was. It was right around 61,350 at the top side of this monthly closing zone, which is that October of 2021 monthly close at 61,350. Now, because Bitcoin closed below the upper second standard deviation, that does make the upper first standard deviation the natural volatility target on any further pullbacks that breach below this monthly and quarterly, because that is the next big zone of support. Not only historically, but if we flip back to the daily, and I have shown this quite a bit, this weekly area was the September of 2021 weekly high at $53,000, and the August and December closing highs that were put in 2021 as well. Now, this area was found as resistance prior to Bitcoin making the new all-time high up here that was also prior to the halving, but found this area as resistance and then again as support before doing so. So this would be the natural SR level that you would be looking for if Bitcoin did begin to break down from this monthly quarterly zone, this 58.8 March closing high on the monthly and quarterly. So this would be criteria fulfilled if we did start to see this, especially on a daily and higher term time frame that fails to reclaim 58.8 and subsequently trade up and close up above not just 58.8 but 61,350 here from the October of 2021 monthly closing high. So if we do start to see this area lost on a daily and higher term time frame close, then the natural target would be down here at the $53,000 to around $50,000, where the monthly upper first standard deviation is. So this is very, very important to understand that this does not mean that the bull market is over. In fact, it's very unlikely. In what I would be looking for if Bitcoin did move down to this area is a longer form consolidation and higher lows. Why? Because if you look here on the chart, the last higher low that Bitcoin put in was all the way down here. And that was on a wick at $24,900, basically $25,000. On a close, slightly above there, right around $26,000 or $25,900. So I'd be looking for higher low structure to develop over time, but it would prolong a correction if Bitcoin did breach down below that monthly and quarterly at 58.8 on any daily or higher term time frame close. Then that natural target would be the upper first. It can even wick past. Where would we be looking if it wicked past? Well, we'd be looking right here to the August of 2022 monthly down to the March of 2022 monthly. Now, this area is very, very big, and I'm going to show you why in a moment. This is at 47,300 to 45,500. Now, previously on the daily, you can see that Bitcoin did play around in this area and it never backtested it. So two areas that it never backtested, and the entire run up, I could go through every single step of it, but suffice to say that Bitcoin found it as resistance, spiked into the monthly down below at 38,500, and then moved pretty much right past this area at 45,500 and $47,000 respectively. So moved right up to that weekly zone and then found that as support and backtested that. Did not come back to backtest or retest this monthly at 47.7 and 45.5. So that is an area to be aware of only if Bitcoin were to initiate a move down to $50,000 to $53,000 at these weeklies here. So it's all conditional. Bitcoin still has not broken down from the range that it's currently in. Is it threatening to? Absolutely, and we have to talk about it. The other side of this current range would be a beautiful, beautiful bear trap, swing down below, and then regain. So go for that meme pullback. Now, the meme pullback that we have seen Bitcoin do since the lows, if you just want to take the main meme pullback number, instead of measuring it out on the weekly, I'll just show you this on the monthly. But from high to low, it's been about 20 to 22%, and it was on the weeklies that you can see this more clearly, but I'm just going to show you the monthly here. If it was going to initiate that same type of move, well, guess where it would end up? On the daily here, we can see that it's kind of already hit the 20% almost. Not quite there yet, but it's currently, no, actually, I take that back. It's at 20.04%. Now, if it was going to go for the meme number, which is the 22%, let's say the upper end of that, we'd be looking somewhere around 57,500. And the only way that I'd be entertaining this as a move down below would be to get everyone really bearish, continue painting this bull flag on the daily and weekly time frame, more importantly. But in this case, I would want to see Bitcoin hit somewhere around underneath this monthly quarterly, swing back up, regain 58.8, and then, like I said before, subsequently regain and start closing dailies and higher term timeframes back above 61,350 or the October of 2021 monthly close. This is the same kind of scenario even now. If Bitcoin does trade up past 61,350, then we mark up just a little bit above there to around 62 to 62,500 or so around the lower first on the daily. And then we would look right back to around 64 $4,000 to $65,000. If it can regain that, we're likely looking at the $67,000 high here. If it can take that out, it's more than likely going to resolve itself back to the highs and higher, into what we had previously discussed as the 75 to 78, 78 to 80, and then mid to low $80,000 region initially. Now, when looking at this monthly, it's going to become very, very apparent on that daily and higher term timeframes in between the daily and monthly during this May candle, what we're going to be, experiencing in this particular market. Now, what I want to do is I want to throw on some moving averages here, and I want to show you where the 9 exponential moving average is coming in on the monthly right now. So this is one of the other things that's lending influence. Not only is the upper first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands right in this $50,000 to $53,000 weekly structure, but we can see that the 9 EMA on the monthly is now in this zone. And we had previously looked at it on the live stream on Monday. And it was somewhere just below here, somewhere around 48,000 or something like that. And it now has ticked up. It was right here. So it was around $49,000. Now it is inside of that monthly support zone. So we do have a point of confluence in that area. In addition, we have a Stoke turn on the monthly as well. So Stoke is now pointed down on any monthly closure, below 70,300. Now, if Bitcoin starts regaining $65,000 and especially $67,000, basically taking out its last daily lower high, this area is likely going to get tested. The highs and higher are then in play again from the monthly perspective. And of course, we would see the Stoke oscillate within the overbought zone here. Now, I did mention that we also saw a 2-month closure. This 2-month closure is looking a little toppy, to be quite honest. And this is where we can start looking down a little bit further. You can see that the next big support area below $50,000 and $53,000 at those weeklies just so happens to be the monthly area that I just pointed out. And that's between 47,000 and 45.5. We have the 2-month 9 EMA coming in right there. And the 9 EMA is, generally speaking, trend support. You can use some faster moving averages. Some people like 5 EMAs. Or even an MA. You're not going to find too much difference there, but I prefer to use the 9. This is something you're going to find in common with many guys from traditional markets, and I believe this is actually taken and with the approval of the caretaker, who also created indicators for Crown to his specifications, and he's also from the traditional market sector. And I believe that he uses either the 8 or the 9. So an 8 isn't going to be much further up than this, but if anything, it would be at the top side of this support. We can actually take a look at an 8 or even a 5 just to see. Let's go ahead and take a look at an 8 just to see where it's at. Is it at the top side of that monthly? Yes, it is. So it is at the $47,000 August 2022 monthly close. And then, of course, the 9 being at the bottom there at 45.5. And I would bet that the 5 EMA, let's go ahead and get that up here just to double check, because some people do like them a little bit faster. And what do you know? It's coming in right at this weekly zone, right under $53,000. So that would be the next big area that I'd be looking for. I would expect to see a lot of interest there. Good for, at minimum, a very large bounce in what I would estimate upon a retest. That doesn't mean that it would necessarily hold up, but something of interest there to pay attention to. And we can even flip this back to a monthly and take a look at where the 5 is. And you can see that it's actually right there in the meme pullback number. So that 5 EMA, you're likely going to see on a lot of crypto Twitter charts. You're going to see it a lot on crypto YouTube, because they're going to take a look at the 5 EMA. It's lining up with that 22% number, and the average for the pullbacks or corrections on this entire move up since the actual macro low at $15,500 on spot has been between that 20 to 22%. So this is going to be an important area to watch. Of course, But like I said, if we start seeing any kind of closures below that that quarterly monthly zone at 58.8, I'm starting to look down towards that $50 to $53,000. Let's go ahead and put this back on the 9. And let's take a quick look at the quarterly here. Now, the quarterly, you can see, is by the time, okay, so unless Bitcoin were to dump all the way down through 45.5 this month in particular, I would not be looking for this 9 EMA on the quarterly. This is at 42,800, almost $43,000. If anything, if we did see a dump off through supports, Bitcoin starts playing around $53,000 and then finds this area as resistance around 58.8 to 61,350 or even $65,000, then that's where I'd be looking at if that $50,000 broke down, likely coming into the quarterly close open at the end of this month. In the May candle, we're likely going to see the 9 EMA right there in line with that March 2022 monthly close, right around 45.5 or even a little bit higher, as it is taking big leaps up and the multi-$1,000 move. So maybe even that $47,000 area would become an area of interest. And, you know, even if it was just a wick, not a big deal. Probably going to hear a lot of triple top talk and bull market over. It's all done. Pack it up. Bulls are dead. But then, you know, I want to point you back to the quarterly here, looking pretty good on momentum coming into the second quarter of this year, no matter where things kind of land right now at around $34,000 for the momentum pivot. The 2-month is at $30,000. So this is actually so far away that this is telling you that if Bitcoin mean reverts really, really hard, which just to remind you, it still has not broken down from the current range, but if it mean reverts really hard, you know, it's more than likely going to bullishly reset on the monthly. And of course, we'd monitor this all the way through and talk about it and the zones of interest and the criteria that would need to be met or the conditions that would need to be met, as this is conditional analysis. That's what you should be doing if you're going to try to define any type of a trading plan around trading price action for Bitcoin. And in this case, you know, 28,500, pretty far away. Now, the monthly, obviously, what am I in favor of? I'm in favor of a bullish reset. Whether it happens here in the overbought zone or it comes down, dips down, we get a more prolonged correction. Maybe we start seeing that $53,000 to $50,000 area, maybe even a little bit deeper to tag the monthlies. Then, you know, I'd be looking for this to kind of swoop down and then bullishly reset and then continue on with a more long form bull market that would actually have much higher targets. So if you are in favor for really, really expensive Bitcoin, then that's what you would actually want to see. You would want to see this area break down and for Bitcoin to begin to really pull back hard into the $50,000 region to $53,000 area. The weekly, just to follow up, you can see the 21 EMA, good basing point for price. If it does get there, is sitting right under the meme pullback there at around 56,200 currently for EMAs. And again, throwing Bollinger Bands on, which is the preferred way of analysis here on this particular channel for getting volatility levels of interest, isn't going to show you much difference there. But closing below the upper first standard deviation does make the basis the natural target. Again, it's all conditional. Bitcoin has to break down from the 58.8 level in order to do that on a daily and or higher term time frame. If it just swings down below and tags it, probably looking at the meme pullback, would still need to see it regain that monthly there at 61,350. So not too much else to talk about there. So let's go ahead and let's look at the daily again and look at the possible 12-hour setup. Now, this particular 12-hour setup would still actually be valid, but it would depend on where the daily closes. If this particular range holds, and if you want to see kind of what you're going to be looking at for many charts around here, you're going to see the bull flag, right? So I'm not a pattern trader, but why do people point out bull flags like this with the lower lows? Well, because they're looking for bullish divergence. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's not really bullish divergence to be had here. All right, so this is where it is a little bit stronger on the bearish side. especially if things begin to break down within this particular range. So, not that I'm going to discount that, because Bitcoin always, and really any kind of asset or indice that you are charting, it's always going to look very, very bearish right before it begins its turn. Excuse me. All right. This is getting a little bit long today, but I want to point this out because this is going to be conditional if Bitcoin can hold 58.8. All right. So let's turn the candles back on and let's look at the 12-hour. Now, the 12-hour, if it can hold the lows, and remember, I did mention that if the 12-hour broke down below 61,350, we were looking for expansion into support. And what we want to see is support hold and or just wick below and still close inside of the support, or you get that swing down and then come right back in. Maybe the mean pullback number would be that. But in this case, you need to see a 12-hour closure back above 60,150. Now, you need to see two things happen. You need to see a close above 60,150, and then you need to see the next pivot number get hit, meaning that if you get an initial cross up, you need to see follow through. We did not see follow through on this prior cross. We saw a cross up on the 12-hour, and it was the sucker's bounce, right? Because we did not see a completed cross up. We did not see both the K and the D read point up. Of course, we have strengthening trend to the downside. We, of course, have red DMI. If there is a request for me to explain what those are, I can in some other video or live stream. I have no problem doing so, but not relevant for right now. But what you need to understand is we got to see close over close it turn the K and the D read to the upside. And typically, how would you see that? In this case, for the 12-hour, next 12-hour candle would at minimum, or during tomorrow's session, if Bitcoin can hold this area, it would need to come up and get above around 61,525 in order to close a low, set the swing low or wherever the next wick lands, and then set a closing low. And then we would have to see follow through in the next closure, holding that pivot number, which would likely come right down to the actual wick lows, somewhere around the $59,000 or wherever the next wick low may land if it's outside of this particular zone. So that is going to be the setup that I'm watching. It is in the critical area, and it's, Bitcoin's threatening to break down pretty much right now, but it is not set yet. All right. One other thing that I would point out is on the 4-hour, we are seeing expansion into support here. If Bitcoin is going to attempt to set a low on the 12-hour, you need to see the 4-hour closing back above the lower first. And in this case, that is right there at around that 61,300 area. So again, around 61.5. If you start seeing the 4-hour close above the lower first, likely by the time Bitcoin probably tries to push up there, if it were to do so from here, you're probably going to see the basis in and around that monthly at 61,350 to 61.5. You need to see that closed above, and then we could be we could start looking rather at the 12-hour for a possible Stoke shift, and then likely a lot of bear tiers from there. If we were to see that. But as it stands right now, Bitcoin is threatening the downside. On the more bullish side of things, if Bitcoin were to pop back up above the highs, we'll do this one more time. Let's say that this is the low. If this was going to be the low, which of course it is not yet because it has not set a low on the daily. But if it were to do so, then we'd be looking somewhere above the highs, which is coming in at around 73,835. I'd be looking somewhere around 75, which is just above here. There's some other fib pulls that come in at around 75 to the 1272 at around 78, 78.5 in this case now, to the 1414 if it can start closing dailies above there between 78 and 80, and then above there the mid to low $80,000 region at the 1618. So it's looking a little less likely from here, but of course things always look bad before they begin to turn. But also note that if it does meet the conditions for further downside, be aware of the areas of interest. that would be somewhere around $56,000 to $58,000 if it's going to complete the meme pullback. And then remember, the criteria is regaining 58.8. Then, if it does pull back down below, swing down below, come back in, regain 58.8, and then subsequently regain 61,350, especially on a daily close. And then we can start targeting up much higher than that to somewhere around $64,000 to $65,000. But it starts closing dailies and higher term timeframes below here, we're likely looking at it messing around down here, finding this area as resistance, and then eventually working its way to 50 to 53. All right, that's going to be it for me today. Sorry about the longer video, but I felt that I needed to explain this with the monthly and 2-month coming in and illustrate some of those other points of confluence when it came to support and resistance and EMAs, in addition to the volatility levels on the Bollinger Bands. So I appreciate you hanging out with me. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, follow, all that good social media stuff, and I will get back at you again in live stream format tomorrow. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening. No matter where you are in the world, please trade safe, and of course, as always, stay safe. Landy out.